You're listening to A Climate Change. This is Matern, your host, and I've got two great guests on the program, Chris Hayes and Elizabeth Thompson. Elizabeth's the executive director, and Chris is a director at Visions2030, which is a nonprofit. They are creators of the Lumisphere experience. It looks a little bit like a geodesic dome created by Buckminster Fuller. And I understand, Elizabeth, you've had a lot of connection to Buckminster Fuller, so it's no surprise that it kind of looks like that. You know, there's an interesting story about connecting with Chris. I met him at COP28 in Dubai. He was sitting down to have a bite to eat, and we sat down next to him. We started talking and told us about this amazing project that you're working on, and also told us about where Al Gore was speaking that night. So we got to see Al Gore, and we heard about this project. So Dubai, you know, had its moments for us. So welcome to the show, Chris and Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Yeah,
Well,
really appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about how this started, Elizabeth. What was your vision behind this, and what's the why behind this project?
Yeah, well, I'll start with just Visions 2030, and it's Visions plural 2030, just for anybody who wants to look us up, visions2030.studio. It is an initiative that was founded 3 to 4 years ago by Carrie Lovelace, who is sort of a brilliant visionary cultural impresario. She has a background as a composer, a playwright, a curator, a journalist in the contemporary art world. And she was really responding during what she likes to say, the high Trump era of the kind of negativity and the kind of catastrophizing of the future that we were all caught in, and I think that kind of perspective on the future continues today. She was interested in gathering a group of people around her to really try to create cultural intervention strategies and experiences that would help people to kind of flip the narrative, to focus on more positive, solution-oriented visions for the future. So that was the sort of baseline impetus for starting this initiative. She brought people in like myself, who spent quite a bit of time running the Buckminster Fuller Institute, Chris, a cultural producer named Yona Backer, John Threat, who is a visionary hacker, and many other people, to begin to imagine what we can offer in terms of sort of cultural production to help reach people and move them toward considering more optimistic, solution-oriented visions for the future.
Well, I think that's a great project, and I find that my own personal experience was wanting to do something for many years and just not taking the first step, because I had great ideas, kind of grandiose plan of contribution, but not that first step. And from what I saw of the work that you all are doing, it's kind of bringing people in to take that first step, empower them to take that first step, and that certainly is something very important. And in particular, I know you were targeting 18 to 34-year-olds who have a lot of climate anxiety, and putting this on a college campus. I understand you did the first one at Cal Arts here in California, and I saw pictures of it, and you had whole bevy of people who were involved in this project, tons of nonprofits as well as other people. Maybe you can explain how that took off, and what was your experience there at Cal Arts?
You want me to take this, Chris?
Yeah,
I can jump in here.
Earth and Vision.
Yeah, exactly. Just to say that we were invited by Cal Arts to to create a sort of festival, really focused on experiences around optimistic narratives for the future. And it was a multi-nodal 10-day festival that sort of took over the campus of Cal Arts, and there were many different ways in which people were invited to consider new ideas, new solutions, new experiences about our shared future. So one of those experiences, sort of the main on the main soccer field of the campus, was called the Lumisphere experience, and that's what you were referring to earlier, Matt. And that was a immersive media environment created that took place inside 3 geodesic domes, where people were invited to go through a sort of meaningful, sort of initially sort of a context setting dome where we sort of shared with people sort of, this is the state of the world today, this is the state of our sort of emotional, psychological relationships to the multivalent crises that we're facing. You entered into the second dome where you were sort of taken on a visual and audio journey into the heart of your own imagination and asked to shed your fear and anxiety and consider what the future that you want to see looks like. Then people traveled into a third dome where they were using iPads and prompted through a series of questions to share what that vision might look like. We then used AI software to take those responses and generate an actual image of what that future that you as an individual want to see looks like. Those images were then displayed on a gallery inside the third dome, so that you could relate to this image, you could talk about it, share it with other people, compare your vision for the future with others right next to you. And then you were invited to go into a fourth area where you were met with guides who helped you unpack your vision for the future. And in that space, you were invited to take part in conversations with leading experts, people in the field of nonprofits and other realms, really at the forefront of climate change solutions and strategies in the Los Angeles area. There was a bookstore, there was a resource library online that you could use to sort of consider, well, this is the vision I want for the future. I feel now like I can participate in bringing that future into the world. And here are the resources that I can take advantage of to begin the first steps of imagining how you might implement that vision.
Well, that's great. I mean, I was relating to something that you had said about the kind of the Trumpian era, and I think that if there was a silver lining to that era, it was that I think it jolted a number of us kind of out of bed and out of our slumber of, hey, we need to get into action, and there are things that we can do independent of Washington to have autonomy in our life and to clean things up and to change our own actions and change the local governments and the state governments and all kinds of things on that level that do make a difference. And I believe that it certainly woke me up a little bit when I think there was a bit of a slumber during the Obama era, thinking, it's being taken care of.
Yeah, they got it right.
There's people back there in Washington, and they seem reasonably competent, and they'll take care of it, which is not really an accurate picture of what we should be doing, because it's going to take everybody involved in this.
That's right.
To make this work. So Chris, tell us a little bit about your place in this in the organization and what talent, how you use.
I will give you some kudos for sort of taking that first step and for all the good work that you do, because it really taking action really does sort of alleviate, mitigate climate anxiety, right? So all the studies have shown that the best thing to do is to get involved in that, reduces or ameliorates climate anxiety, which is really what we're trying to do within the context of the Lumisphere experience. And so we're trying to, as you were saying, this climate solutions do exist out there, right? It's just essential to, mobilize more people, more collective will, more collective action. So, the Lumisphere is about helping people change their climate mindsets from negative to positive and solution oriented, and potentially mapping out their own sort of individual action plan. So in the context of my role at Visions 2030 and sort of after, we met in Dubai, and we basically had a very good trial phase for the Lumisphere experience at Cal Arts. And so we decided to keep going and to really try to scale it. So that's why we were in Dubai, just building bridges and talking to stakeholders and figuring out our sort of strategic plan. And that's what we're doing right now, figuring out the partners, what we want to do. And ultimately, we want to just mobilize a greater army on the climate front. So we're building a strategic plan. I, in particular, my focus is on engagement, who we need to talk with, who we need to partner with, who we can get sponsorships of. And ultimately, we want to take the Lumisphere experience, we want to take it nationally throughout the US. We want to take it globally. We also are, looking at potentially creating multiple Lumispheres, because there are, for scale, but also there are possible ways to actually modify the experience for certain purposes. And then we also want to do some sort of digital or app, gamified app version. So it's really exciting. And the impact we have is we just want to scale it and do our part to get more people involved and being productive on the climate front.
Well, that's great. You're listening to A Climate Change. I've got Chris Hayes and Elizabeth Thompson from Visions 2030. We'll be right back in just 1 minute to talk to them about the Lumisphere experience. We can change the world if we do it together. You're listening to A Climate Change. This is Matt Matern. I've got Chris Hayes and Elizabeth Thompson with Visions 2030, the creators of the Lumisphere experience. Well, right before the break, Chris, you were explaining that you're looking to roll this out to a larger audience, and I think that would be great. I was thinking that at COP28, there were certainly lots of people who were potential funding sources, a lot of those big oil companies and the like, as well as sovereign wealth funds that that were run by the Emirati, probably have tons of money to invest in this. And I was kind of impressed by how much work they were doing to make their own environments more livable, because they're being hit on the front lines with temperatures that are essentially unlivable. So they're waking up to the fact that if we just don't do anything about fossil fuels, they're going to have real estate that's uninhabitable for the most part. So tell us a little bit about what the next steps look like for your organization and where you see it going.
Sure. Thank you. So Dubai was a great experience for us. The real point of going was to meet different stakeholders, just to get smarter on the space, to see about potential partnerships and funding sources, and also just to get good advice. We're building an advisory board right now with some people with unique perspectives, but also people who can make connections. And as I mentioned, it's sort of a strategic plan. So we're talking to a variety of folks within the context of the United States, but as mentioned, we also would like to take it globally. So, a future COP would be great to have the Lumisphere experience down the road, but that's something that we'll deal with eventually. But we really just want to bring it to the US and go to multiple locations, for say 6 to 8 weeks. in high traffic areas and work with brands to potentially sponsor it. But the ultimate point, right, is people go through the Lumisphere and to sort of look for the future and to determine the future and to have sort of their own skin in the game vis-a-vis sustainability and climate, is to get more people through it and to get more people involved. And then at the end, they can sort of build their own sort of action plan. So Dubai was, go ahead.
Sorry, no.
So Dubai was a really great opportunity for us to meet with various leaders. There's a lot of follow-up that we're doing. And now we're kind of building out our action plan for the future for the next few years.
That's great. Elizabeth, I think you had met with Al Gore while you were there in Dubai. What's your connection to Al? Tell us a little bit about that.
I didn't have a formal meeting. I just said hello. He is I've met him before in the context of my work at the Buckminster Fuller Institute. Buckminster Fuller, for those of you who don't know who he was a 20th century futurist, visionary, kind of one of the first global systems thinker who kind of popularized this notion of kind of thinking global, act local. He's best known for inventing the geodesic dome. And he was a huge kind of data geek who felt that any solutions that were going to be effective in the future needed to be informed by trends of the past and the present and to analyze where they're going forward. Al Gore was particularly inspired by a concept of Fuller's called the geoscope, which was an idea to take the real-time data feeds from the scientific community about the flows of resources happening on the planet and use it as a kind of decision support tool. Al Gore's initiative while he was vice president that he launched called the Digital Earth Initiative was directly inspired by this idea of Fuller's for the geoscope. And so I've had a little bit of interaction with him over the years, and I was just able to say hi and just remind him of our connection to Buckminster Fuller. And he's he brought him to Congress a couple of times when Gore was a congressman from Tennessee, and he's just been a deeply personally influential figure in Gore's trajectory.
Well, it's interesting, and I think it probably, you could say, relates to Gore's current work, which is to monitor these hotspots where there's lots of emissions, and that's kind of
right.
a data crunching process, which I think is very cool.
Right. And I think the key tool here is finding ways to meaningfully visualize and communicate this complex data so that regular people can see it, use it, and orient themselves and their actions going forward in relationship to the real data about what's actually going on planet-wide, but most importantly in your local community. So I think that's part of what this new company, it's a for-profit company, I think, that Al Gore was at COP in no small part to announce the launch of. I might be wrong there, but I think that's part of why he was there.
Right. Yeah, I believe that that sounds accurate to me.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in that area, but I did hear him talk about it at that speech that we were probably both at.
Yeah.
I think that it kind of goes to this point that relates to the Lumisphere experience, is that you have creative thinkers like a Buckminster Fuller, and they're opening up space for somebody like a Gore to step into. So you don't know how it's going to affect downstream.
Right.
You may have some young people going through there that may end up being the next Congress people, the next senator, the next leaders in the world, and this touches them in a way that they start to act.
Yeah.
And we see a real application for when we take it, particularly in the United States, to communities on the community level to get more people involved, right? But also, and this is something that Elizabeth is emphatic about, the data that we get from people's interactions with the Lumisphere, for their vision for the future, can really help in planning local communities from the sustainability side, but can also just get us a lot smarter while we are also presumably, getting more people involved. So that's another thing that within the context of the Lumisphere experience can be very valuable and a really unique and productive, application of it. So that's another thing that we're going to be talking to partners and sponsors about.
Well, tell us about the Earth Edition, Elizabeth.
So that was the festival. The context for the Lumisphere, which was one component of this 10-day festival that took place at Cal Arts, which is the shorthand for the California Institute of the Arts, which is located in Valencia, California, about 30 miles north of LA proper. Cal Arts is, world renowned for the sort of radical artistic ideas that came out of there in the 60s and 70s. They've had a huge influence on contemporary art and culture. They're most well known for their animation department. So they were a sort of perfect venue for us to experiment ourselves with pulling together a kind of multimedia, multinodal experience for visitors to come and engage with ideas about more optimistic climate futures. There was a music program, there was a contemporary art exhibition, there was something called the Zukunft Garden, which was a kind of immersive experience inside a theater, where it was sort of a invitation for students and other artists, performers, cultural makers to come and in a sort of DIY fashion, share their work, share their ideas. It was designed in many ways to emphasize the joy, the opportunity to connect with others that we need to keep at the forefront of our experience as we address these very, very challenging times. Climate change was, and eco-consciousness was the framework for Earth Edition, but I would argue that we are, as a human community, facing multiple interrelated crises simultaneously. And so we were offering a set of experiences to help people stay engaged, stay strong, stay optimistic, and keep at it, and invite more people
connect
to
more
join us.
to the planet too, correct?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
So
that's a good point, that all of our problems are interrelated. So the climate problem is not unconnected from issues regarding democracy or issues regarding mental health
Right.
of
absolutely. And social justice, and it is one big hot mess, but you can't solve one of these problems without fundamentally solving the entire system that has brought us to this place. And our Visions 2030's perspective on this is that we need more people in the game. B, we need to be focusing on solutions. We're very, very good as a culture to critique the present, analyze the past. We're not quite as good at envisioning where we want to go. And we need these aspirational futures to inform us as to how to move forward and to inspire people to get involved.
Well, that's a great goal, and I'm so completely in alignment with that one. You're listening to A Climate Change. I've got Chris Hayes and Elizabeth Thompson from Visions 2030, and we'll be right back in just 1 minute to dive a little bit deeper into this conversation.
We can change the world if we do it
You're listening to A Climate Change. I've got Chris Hayes and Elizabeth Thompson, executive director of Visions 2030, a nonprofit, creators of the Lumisphere experience. And we had talked a little bit about this before. Elizabeth, maybe you could tell us the connection of the sphere in Las Vegas and the Lumisphere.
Sure. We had the great good fortune to partner with a company called Minds Over Matter. They were formerly known as Obscura Digital and are pioneers in the immersive media space. They had a studio and laboratory for immersive media experimentation in San Francisco for 20 some odd years. They worked with MSG, the developers of the Sphere in Las Vegas, to create the Sphere. Their technology, both from a hardware and a software perspective, is the kind of engines that are running that fantastic experience. And I believe they probably did some of the content production as well. So their sort of visionary leader is a guy named Travis Threlkel, who I knew during my Buckminster Fuller days, and it was just a real pleasure and thrill to work with them to create the Lumisphere experience. And I'll just say that the idea for the journey through these domes and the sort of, genesis of the whole idea came from Carrie Lovelace, the founder of Visions 2030. And she really, worked shoulder to shoulder with Minds Over Matter to create the experience.
That's great. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about the power of an experience I had recently, which was going to the planetarium at the New York Natural History Museum, which I kind of had like an hour or two to kill, and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to go to the Guggenheim, but it was a little bit too far, so I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go here, and thinking, oh, it'll just be old dinosaur bones and stuff. Being in this amazing planetarium experience, and I just walked out of there just so kind of inspired by this experience, and so I'm trying to relate that to, I haven't been through the Lumisphere experience, but those types of experience can kind of like shift your consciousness in a really powerful way.
That's exactly what it's for. And just to your point about earlier about, it's going to take everybody to get involved in the game if we're going to solve the problems facing us. This is our contribution in a way, from the cultural sector to try to meet people where they are, really addressing in a meaningful way the fear, the anxiety, the shutdown that comes from being overwhelmed by all the negative news. And through this experience, help to move people forward in ways that we can't predict. We're not trying to tell people what to do or how to respond to the issues we are facing. We're just trying to create an experience that opens them up a little bit to consider new ways to engage as individuals and as communities.
Well, thinking about the future they want through the experience, and the more you do that, you sort of recalibrate, you're inspired, and then at the end, they can sort of map out their own plan if they choose through these different guides who will talk to them about their experience in the Lumisphere, but then also can provide them with resources and sort of mapping out their own climate plan, again, if they choose.
Yeah, well, I was kind of struck by, hey, I came out of that planetarium experience, and I was had this sense of energy, inspiration, but there wasn't anybody there to kind of collaborate with. You
Right.
walked the experience and you're left a bit more inspired, but it's more powerful if somebody's there to kind of, okay, we'll take the next step. Hey, where can you channel some of this
Yeah.
energy that you've gained from this experience? And so that I think is a brilliant part of what you all have designed to get people involved and envision this future. And I want to follow up on this point that Elizabeth, you had raised about the weakness of our future game here in the U.S. or maybe in the world in general, and how the data that you all are collecting can help help people create a future that is one they want to live into.
Sure. What we're doing, what we have the opportunity with the Lumisphere experience to do is, I like to think about it as, a tool to take sort of a census on the future of individuals living in a certain community at a certain point in time. And in the third chamber of this experience, the third dome, we invite people to select amongst a number of different possible scenario variables for the future that inform the AI that creates the image of their future. We then for example, at CalArts, we have, I don't know, 3,000 to 5,000 people who went through the Lumisphere experience. Those choices for the future comprise a kind of metadata set that gives us some insight into what people in Santa Clarita County in September of 2023 want for the future. There's also 3,000 to 5,000 images of what that group of people wants for the future. We feel that that is a very powerful insight generating set of data that we are in the process of talking to social science research experts, as well as others, about how we can turn that data into meaningful information that stakeholders in a community might be able to use in positive ways to come together and talk concretely about what they want for the future. I would just, sorry, I'm going on here, but I just would add that we got a significant amount of feedback from people going through the Lumisphere, the 3-dome chamber, and then what we were calling the mentoring tent. And they described the experience as a third space, which is a concept that a lot of people are talking about now, which doesn't really exist anymore in our communities, at least in the United States. And the third space can sort of generally be defined as a space for communities to come together and connect, to talk about their lives, to talk about their communities, what's going right, what they want for the future, etc. Those kinds of spaces, are few and far between,
And they used to be prolific. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's been this notion that the digital realm is our new third space because we can all get together and connect and feel much more close and, on the same page about what we're doing in the future. And the truth of the matter is that is not the case. And one could argue that the digital space is actually kind of alienating us from each other. And so that is also, one of the things that we've created here with the Lumisphere experience, and we want to offer to communities as we take it on the road. Plus that data set that stakeholders in that community may find useful.
And that can also be modified in the Dome 3. The queries can be modified based on the issue or the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that obviously the digital world has had its positive effects, but there's no doubt that it can't completely substitute to deal with personal connections. And I think that this show and my connection to Chris at COP28 shows, hey, when you're in the real and you see somebody, share kind of a meal with them and you get to know them a little bit, then it just opens up a richness that generally doesn't happen in the digital world. So,
yeah.
I
And we
just separately from a personal observation, I have 3 kids, and I know that the less they're outside, the more that they're online, the more that they're in front of a screen, the mental health, there's a clear correlation, and the studies prove that out, of mental health issues. So,
Well, you're listening to A Climate Change. This is Matt Matern, and I've got Chris Hayes and Elizabeth Thompson from Visions 2030. We'll be right back in just 1 minute to talk more about the Lumisphere and creating a future that is one that we're going to be excited about living in.
We can change the world if we do it together.
You're listening to A Climate Change, and this is Matt Matern. I've got Chris Hayes and Elizabeth Thompson from Visions 2030, the creators of the Lumisphere experience. And, let's talk a little bit about imagination. I understand that this is a big part of the work that you're doing. And why is this so powerful, and why do we need to encourage imagination, Elizabeth?
Well, I think it's fundamental to the vision of Visions 2030, and certainly the founder of Visions 2030, Carrie Lovelace. The buck stops for her and all of us with the power of the imagination, and we're living in a time when, one could argue that. We don't have a lot of visionary ideas for the future percolating in the kind of mainstream media and in our lives, and it is going to take the wild and crazy and visionary ideas that come from the well springs of our imagination to move forward in positive directions. And so Visions 2030 is all about that, and creating experiences to recognize, celebrate, and catalyze the artistic imagination, which we believe lives in everybody. And by that, I mean not that you are an artist or that this is the domain only of artists, but that kind of that capacity to innovate, to think about things in new and different ways, to ask challenging questions, to provide new kinds of insights and answers to where we're going to go for the future lives in everybody. And our programs and experiences are designed to help people reconnect to that part of themselves in order to make new contributions to where we're going in the future.
Well, I think that if one follows kind of mainstream media a lot of times, or just the herd thinking that all of us are probably guilty of engaging in and just doing what people around us are doing and that kind of thing.
Right.
It's not very imaginative living in the same way everybody else is living, or driving a big car and doing eating a lot of meat and so on and so forth. It's just, well, that isn't very imaginative. That's plowing the ground that we've all tread before. And I was reading a book by Rick Rubin about creativity and artistic creation, and I personally think that everybody's a bit of an artist, and we're all creating our own lives. So we have a chance to design our life and the community around us if we're engaged in it, if we're thinking, if we're coming into it newly, if we're around people that are helping and encouraging and inspiring those possibilities. And I see what you're doing with the Lumisphere as being a catalyst for that. And maybe Chris, you can talk about how you see this rolling out in the future, as you're a strategy guy.
Yeah, that's the beauty of I think the programming and the different things that Visions 2030 promotes, supports, funds, is that it does, help people to tap their own imagination, their own artistic, ability, whatever that is. And, Elizabeth used the term catalyze, which I think that's really what the Lumisphere is all about. And because people take various different things from the three domed experience and then talking to a mentor at the end. Like I said, we really want to, at the end of the day, our goal is to scale the Lumisphere. And by that, we mean we want more people to experience it. We want climate conversations to go from the negative to positive, more solutions based, right? You talked about the media coverage. Well, I know a lot of people who just really have shut down on the news, unfortunately, because of some of the political news, but also because on the climate front, on the environmental front, all you hear are just horrible things that aren't necessarily solution oriented. So people just shut down. That creates more climate anxiety, right? More paralysis and less people involved. And so we just hope to be part of that solution of getting more people involved, addressing climate anxiety by helping more people get involved. And that inherently, in what the academics say, is what happens. So we're looking to create some unique partnerships, get some funders out there from the corporate side. We want to be involved in some major global events, to have the Lumisphere at some major global events where we have a lot of traffic, a lot of influence, and a lot of promotion, and a lot of people experiencing the Lumisphere. And then also, as we discussed, there's some really unique ways in which the Lumisphere experience can be involved at the community level, which we think can really be productive. If anyone, we have a website, visions2030.studio, so people can get more information. And if it's okay, I'm going to give my email address for folks who want to get more information. It's Christopher Hayes, Hayes, at visions2030.studio.
Sounds great. Well, I was, as you were thinking about it, I was using my imagination to say, hey, what about the major foundations out there, the Ford Foundation, MacArthur,
Absolutely,
Gates, all of those, as well as the government. I mean, the government's has funded the arts before, and this isn't just purely an arts project, but there is an arts component to it. What's
we're looking at, there's a particular relationship we're considering with a state in the Northeast, where we partner related to what we've been discussing, but also involving some of the students at a state university, so that there's a knowledge transfer, skill set knowledge transfer there, with some of the data that is collected, and also some of the formulation of the Lumisphere, and the queries that we mentioned in Dome 3 are designed and involved by some of the students. So there's a lot of synergy there. So there's so many applications. It's really about, I'll just throw another one out there that we're looking, there's some large scale malls in the United States that have a lot of real estate that is not being used, right? And they want to bring in unique experiences to drive traffic. And so there's some malls in the country that are thriving, but there are many that are not. So that's just another area that we're looking to potentially deploy the Lumisphere also, or maybe multiple Lumispheres down the road. So there's a lot of different opportunity.
Well, it seems as though they're just anywhere there's a lot of people would be a good opportunity.
Exactly.
Have this experience shared, and to, as Elizabeth said, open up people's imaginations going forward. Tell us a little bit, maybe, Elizabeth, your experience of COP28 and how this was playing out with the people that you were talking to there, and where you see, where's your vision, where's your imagination of where this is going?
Well, I would just say that COP was, I'd never been to a COP before, so it was It was pretty wild. I think with the context of where it was held and who was organizing it and hosting and everything, I was very well versed in the controversies going in around all of those ideas. But to your point that you mentioned, I think before we even started, that it's going to take everybody to be involved in this issue if we're going
Full
to
court
specifically
press.
climate change, if we're going to evolve things. And having the oil industry host, pay for, and run the COP negotiations, it is a kind of necessary strategy, to meet the goals that we've set ourselves for as a global community, with all the controversies involved in that. I came away optimistic. We spent a lot of time in the innovation zones with the philanthropic and the investment sector, and the amount of innovation, the amount of creativity. The imagination is alive and well in those sectors for technological development, for social innovation, for you name it. It's being considered, or there's already a working prototype. Exciting and very inspiring.
Well, speaking of exciting and inspiring, it's been great to have you and Chris. Everybody check out visions2030.studio, and it's a great nonprofit, and promote this Lumisphere experience. I think everybody will benefit by it. So thank you again for your great work, and thanks for being on the program. And tune in next week, everybody.